New York City was still buzzing at midnight, the neon signs burning brighter than the stars hidden behind its light, polluted sky. The sidewalks were packed with tourists chasing the last subway and locals rushing home after long shifts. But a different kind of energy stirred on 42nd Street that night, an unease that rippled through the air like a warning no one could hear. Detective Ellie Carter leaned against her unmarked sedan, sipping the last of her cold coffee. At 36, she had seen enough in her career with NYPD Major Crimes Division to know when the city was about to deliver another nightmare. The call had come in less than an hour ago, missing person, high profile. Those words always meant chaos. The victim was Clara Dane, a 22-year-old college student and daughter of real estate tycoon Richard Dane. Clara wasn't just anyone. She was heiress to $1 billion empire, often photographed at charity galas and adored on social media for her activism. When someone like Clara disappeared, the press swarmed like sharks. Ellie's partner, Detective Marcus Reed, a broad-shouldered man with a calm but sharp presence, stepped out of the apartment building with the first details. She was last seen around 9:30 p.m. Marcus reported, flipping open his notebook. Neighbor says she came home, dropped her bag, and left again 15 minutes later. Didn't say where she was headed. Security cameras at the entrance caught her leaving alone. Any sign of forced entry? Ellie asked, none. Apartment spotless. Purse and phone are gone, but her laptop is still on the desk. She left in a hurry. Ellie exhaled, her mind already racing. Someone like Clara doesn't just vanish. Either she's running from something, or someone took her. Across the street, journalists were already gathering, shoving microphones at anyone who looked like a cop. The flashing camera lights made the scene feel less like an investigation and more like a red carpet event. Ellie hated cases like this. Public pressure meant mistakes could be fatal to her career, to the department, and most of all, to Clara. Inside Clara's apartment, Ellie took her time scanning the details. The place was modern, tastefully decorated, but lacked personality. No family photos on the walls, no clutter, nothing that revealed who Clara truly was. Her laptop sat open on the desk. The screen displayed a half-written email draft. "Dad, I know you won't understand, but I can't keep living under your shadow. There are things you don't know about the people you work with. Dangerous things. If anything happens to me..." The email ended abruptly, the cursor still blinking. Ellie's stomach tightened. This wasn't just a spoiled heiress gone partying. Clara had been afraid. Marcus looked over her shoulder. "That doesn't sound like someone planning to disappear for fun." "No," Ellie agreed. "That sounds like someone who knew a secret." By 2:00 a.m., they had security footage from the street. Clara walked briskly out of her building in a black coat, glancing over her shoulder as if she feared someone was following her. She headed east toward a busy avenue, then vanished. No taxis picked her up, no ride shares. The cameras 2 blocks down didn't catch her at all. It was as if she had melted into the city. Ellie replayed the footage again and again, looking for details. On the 4th viewing, she noticed it. A dark SUV parked across the street, engine running. Its headlights flickered just as Clara stepped onto the sidewalk. Marcus frowned. "Looks like she was being watched, and probably taken," Ellie muttered. By morning, the case had exploded on every news channel. Heiress Clara Dane missing police investigation underway. Reporters hounded the precinct demanding answers. Richard Dane himself showed up, flanked by lawyers and bodyguards. His face was stone, but his eyes burned with fury. "If you don't find my daughter," he told Ellie directly, "I'll make sure every cop in this city regrets it." Ellie didn't flinch. She'd dealt with powerful men before. But she couldn't shake the feeling that Richard Dane knew more than he was letting on. That night, Ellie sat in her office long after the others had gone. She spread Clara's file across her desk. Grades, friends, charity work, social media accounts. Everyone described Clara as bright, passionate, and independent, but buried in her phone records was a curious pattern. Dozens of calls in the past 2 weeks to an unknown number, all late at night. Ellie dialed it. The line rang once before a deep voice answered. You shouldn't be calling this number. This is Detective Carter with the NYPD, Ellie said, keeping her tone steady. Who are you, and what's your connection to Clara Dane? There was silence. Then the voice replied coldly, If you value your life, detective, stop looking for her. The line went dead. Ellie sat frozen, the dial tone humming in her ear. For the first time in years, she felt a chill crawl down her spine. Clara Dane hadn't just disappeared. She had been swallowed by something bigger, darker, and far more dangerous than Ellie had imagined, and Ellie had just made herself its next target. The morning after the threatening phone call, Ellie woke with the metallic taste of unease still clinging to her tongue. She wasn't the type to be easily rattled. 10 years in homicide had hardened her nerves, but there was something about that voice. Calm, deliberate, and too certain. Whoever it was didn't just know Clara. They knew the investigation had already begun. When she reached the precinct, Marcus was already at his desk, combing through Clara's social media. "You're not going to like this," he said, turning his screen toward her. The account had exploded overnight. Hashtags like #FindClara and #Justice for Clara were trending. Photos of Clara flooded the internet, from glossy magazine covers to grainy college dorm selfies. But mixed in with the sympathy were darker threads. Anonymous posts suggesting she had run away, others hinting she was involved in drugs, and even a few conspiracy theories tying her to her father's controversial real estate empire. Ellie sighed. The internet's about to bury us in noise. Half the city will be convinced she's dead before we even know what happened. Marcus leaned back. Speaking of her father, we should talk about him. Richard Dane was a titan in New York. His company, Dane Global Properties, owned nearly a quarter of the high-rises dotting the Manhattan skyline. But the man's reputation was tainted with rumors, bribes to city officials, evictions of tenants, construction accidents that had mysteriously disappeared from records. None of it ever stuck, but Ellie knew the type. Power like his didn't come clean. Clara's email draft mentioned her father's dangerous partners. Ellie said, pulling up the screenshot, if she was digging into his business, she may have uncovered something she wasn't supposed to. Marcus's brow furrowed, and if that's true, her disappearance isn't random. It's a message. They paid Richard Dane a visit at his glass and steel office tower on Fifth Avenue. The lobby screamed wealth, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, walls lined with abstract art worth more than Ellie's annual salary. Dane was waiting in his corner office, framed by floor, the ceiling windows overlooking the city. He didn't bother to stand. "You've made no progress," he said coldly. "The media is tearing me apart, and every minute my daughter is missing makes me look weaker." Ellie kept her voice even. "We're doing everything possible, Mr. Dane, but I need you to be honest with me. Who were you working with that Clara might have considered dangerous?" For the first time, a flicker of something crossed his face. Fear, maybe, or anger. He smoothed his tie before replying, "My daughter was naive. She read too much, made up stories. I don't traffic with criminals, detective. I build this city." Ellie leaned forward. "Then explain the phone call I got last night. Someone tied to your daughter told me to back off or I'd end up like her." His eyes narrowed. "If anyone's threatening you, deal with them. That's your job, not mine." Ellie's hands itched to slam the desk, but she held steady. Richard Dane wasn't just hiding something. He was terrified of what Clara might have uncovered. As they left, Marcus muttered under his breath, "Man's got ice water in his veins." "Or blood on his hands," Ellie replied. Back at the precinct, Ellie and Marcus dug into Dane Global's financial records. It didn't take long to find red flags, shell companies registered overseas, payments routed through offshore accounts, and a string of construction contracts awarded to firms with mob ties. "Bingo," Marcus said, highlighting a payment to a company called Ironcrest Holdings. "Guess who runs this one? Dominic Vaselli, mid, level player in the Rossi crime family. They've got their hands in construction, unions, you name it. Ellie felt the puzzle click into place. Clara must have discovered her father's ties to the Rossi family. If she had evidence, she'd be a threat not just to Richard Dane, but to organized crime itself. Which means, Ellie said slowly, whoever has Clara isn't just trying to hurt her father. They're trying to silence her. That night, Ellie went home to her small Brooklyn apartment. She poured herself a glass of whiskey and stared out the window at the city skyline. Somewhere in that endless sprawl of lights, Clara Dane was alive, or her body was hidden. Ellie's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You were warned, last chance to walk away. Attached was a photo. It showed Clara, bound to a chair in a dim warehouse, eyes wide with terror. A bruised cut on her cheek glistened under harsh light. Ellie's blood ran cold. Marcus's voice crackled over the line when she called him. Jesus Christ, that's her. They're taunting us. They're testing me. Ellie said grimly. They want to see if I'll blink. The next day, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Clara's roommate, a shy art student named Jessica. She arrived at the precinct clutching a folder of sketches. She never told me exactly. Jessica whispered, but Clara was obsessed with her father's business. She said she found something dangerous. She was planning to meet someone, to hand it over. Jessica slid a sketch across the table. It was of a man's face, sharp jawline, shaved head, snake tattoo curling up his neck. That's the guy she said she trusted. Jessica explained he was supposed to protect her. Ellie and Marcus exchanged a look. They knew that face. Vincent Caro, Marcus said, enforcer for the Rossi family. 2 priors for assault, suspected in 3 murders, never convicted. If Clara went to him for protection, she walked straight into the lion's den, Ellie finished. That night, Ellie drove to the East River docks, where the Rossi family was known to operate. Fog curled over the water, and the smell of salt and rust clung to the air. She parked a block away and waited, binoculars trained on a warehouse glowing faintly with activity. Men moved in and out, carrying crates. Guns hung from their belts like accessories, and then she saw him, Vincent Caro, snake tattoo twisting under the floodlights. If Clara was still alive, this was where she'd be. Ellie's pulse hammered. She wasn't supposed to be here without backup, but waiting meant losing time, and Clara didn't have much left. Ellie tightened her grip on her gun, whispered a prayer she hadn't said in years, and slipped into the shadows of the dockyard. She was about to walk straight into the empire of the Rossi family, an empire where people like Clara disappeared forever. The docks smelled of diesel and decay. Fog clung low to the ground, wrapping the East River warehouses in a ghostly veil. Detective Ellie Carter crouched behind a rusted shipping container, her breath shallow, her hand tight around the grip of her Glock. She could hear the hum of voices inside the warehouse, rough men laughing over something cruel. Through a gap in the corrugated wall, she spotted Vincent Caro, the Rossi family's enforcer, pacing the floor like a wolf in a cage. His shaved head gleamed under the floodlights, the snake tattoo coiling along his neck with every movement. He barked orders at 2 men unloading crates. Ellie's instincts screamed that Clara was inside. She had no warrant, no backup, just a gut feeling and the photograph of Clara tied to a chair. If she was wrong, she could blow the entire investigation. If she was right, every second mattered. She waited for one of the guards to step out to smoke. When he did, she moved like a shadow, slipping behind him. A sharp jab to the base of his skull dropped him silently. She dragged him behind the container, cuffed his hands, and took his access badge. Inside, the warehouse was colder than the night air. Rows of crates stacked to the ceiling formed a labyrinth. The smell of oil, dust, and something coppery, blood, maybe, stung her nose. She pressed against the walls, listening for movement. A muffled cry reached her ears. Ellie's chest tightened. Clara. She followed the sound, weaving through the maze until she found a makeshift room built from plywood at the back. A single bulb swung overhead. Inside, Clara Dane sat bound to a chair, duct tape across her mouth, her eyes wide with terror. Ellie's throat constricted, but she forced herself to stay calm. She crouched, pulled out her knife, and whispered, "Clara, I'm NYPD. I'm here to get you out." Clara shook her head violently. Her gaze flicked behind Ellie. Ellie spun just in time to see Vincent Caro step out of the shadows, gun raised. Well, he drawled, smirking, the good detective. "I was wondering when you'd come sniffing around." Ellie raised her hands slightly, gun still in her grip. "You don't have to do this, Vincent. Kidnapping a billionaire's daughter, that's a death sentence." Vincent chuckled, low and cruel. "You think this is about money? You cops never see the big picture." Clara here stuck her nose where it didn't belong. She thought she could expose her daddy's friends, but Daddy, he pays good money to keep things quiet. Ellie's stomach dropped. "Her father's behind this." Vincent's grin widened. "Smart girl. Dane wanted the problem handled. The family just happened to owe him a favor." Ellie's finger tightened on the trigger. She had suspected Richard Dane was dirty, but to arrange his own daughter's disappearance. "That was monstrous. You kill her," Ellie said evenly, "and every camera in this city will be hunting you. You'll be dead within a week." Vincent shrugged. "Maybe, but I'll be rich. And you?" He aimed his gun at Ellie's chest. "You'll be nothing." Ellie didn't wait. She dropped low, rolling behind a stack of crates as Vincent fired. The crack of the gunshot echoed through the warehouse. Clara screamed behind the duct tape. Ellie returned fire, bullets sparking against steel beams. Two of Vincent's men rushed in, weapons drawn. The warehouse erupted in chaos. Ellie moved fast, weaving between crates, forcing the men to split up. One came too close. She grabbed his wrist, slammed his arm into the crate, and fired point blank into his chest. He crumpled. The second fired wildly, bullets shredding wood. Ellie ducked, kicked a loose plank into his knees, and put him down with a clean shot. But Vincent was no amateur. He flanked her, appearing at her side like a ghost. His fist cracked across her jaw, sending her sprawling. Her gun skittered across the floor. "Should have stayed out of this, detective." He snarled, pressing his boot to her chest. "Now you get to die with the girl." Ellie's vision blurred, but then she saw it. The loose steel chain hanging from the crane above. She grabbed it and yanked hard. The chain swung down, smashing into Vincent's shoulder. He stumbled, cursing, giving Ellie the split second she needed. She lunged for her gun, rolled, and fired. The bullet tore through Vincent's arm. He roared, clutching the wound, and staggered back. Ellie scrambled to Clara, cutting the ropes. "We have to move now." But Clara grabbed her wrist, eyes wild. "It's bigger than you think." She whispered hoarsely, "They'll never let me leave alive." Before Ellie could answer, the warehouse filled with headlights. More SUVs screeched to a stop outside. Dozens of men poured in, guns bristling. Vincent laughed, blood dripping down his arm. "You're surrounded, detective. You can't save her. You can't even save yourself." Ellie's heart pounded. She had Clara free, but escape looked impossible. Then she heard sirens in the distance. Backup, Marcus. Vincent's smirk faltered. "Looks like the cavalry's coming," Ellie said, yanking Clara behind a crate. "And you're about to lose your empire." The firefight that erupted was chaos incarnate. NYPD units swarmed the dockyard, exchanging gunfire with the Rossi men. Ellie shielded Clara, pushing her toward the exit as bullets shredded wood and glass around them. Marcus burst through the side door, shotgun in hand. Ellie, move. Together, they dragged Clara into the night, ducking behind squad cars as officers returned fire. The warehouse blazed with muzzle flashes. Vincent was dragged out by his men, bleeding but alive, shoved into a black SUV that roared away into the fog. Ellie wanted to chase him, but Clara was trembling in her arms, whispering over and over, "It's not over. They won't stop." And deep down, Ellie knew she was right. The Rossi family wasn't finished. Richard Dane wasn't finished. Clara Dane had survived the lion's den, but the real war was only beginning. The precinct's interrogation room was usually cold, but tonight it felt suffocating. Detective Ellie Carter sat across from Clara Dane, who was wrapped in a blanket, her face pale but her eyes fierce. The young woman's voice trembled at first, but once she began speaking, the floodgates opened. "They were going to kill me," Clara whispered, "and it wasn't just the Rossi family. My father, he ordered it." Ellie exchanged a quick glance with Marcus, who leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Clara, we need specifics," Ellie said gently. "What did you find that made your father want you gone?" Clara pulled a flash drive from her coat pocket, the one Ellie had retrieved with her when they escaped the warehouse. She set it on the table like it was radioactive. "This," Clara said. "Everything is on here. Financial records, shell companies, transfers. My father's empire isn't just real estate. It's money laundering, racketeering, even human trafficking. The Rossi family runs the dirty work. Dad keeps their hands clean on paper." Ellie's stomach knotted. She had suspected Dane was dirty, but not to this scale. If what Clara was saying was true, Richard Dane wasn't just a businessman with shady partners. He was the beating heart of an organized crime syndicate disguised as legitimate wealth. Marcus stepped closer. "How did you get this?" Clara's lips curled into a faint, defiant smile. "Dad thinks I'm just a spoiled girl. He underestimated me. I hacked into his personal files. He doesn't know I copied them. Yet." Ellie leaned forward. "Clara, you understand what this means. If we use this evidence, we're not just arresting a mob enforcer. We're going after one of the most powerful men in New York City." Clara's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady. "Then you understand why I couldn't run. Someone has to stop him, even if it costs me my life." The precinct buzzed with activity that night. Officers were still processing the shootout at the docks. The Rossi family had vanished into the shadows, but the pressure was on. News outlets screamed headlines: "Heiress rescued in police shootout," "Richard Dane silent as daughter alleges criminal ties." The mayor's office called every hour. The FBI wanted jurisdiction. Everyone smelled blood in the water. Ellie uploaded the contents of the flash drive with the cybercrimes unit. Within hours, analysts confirmed Clara's claims. Accounts traced to Cayman Islands banks, coded payments tied to offshore properties, and contracts linking Dane Global to at least 3 unsolved disappearances. "This isn't just corruption," Marcus muttered, scanning the reports. "It's a criminal empire with Dane at the center." But before they could celebrate the breakthrough, Ellie's phone rang, an unknown number again. She answered cautiously. The same deep voice that had warned her before growled, "You made the wrong choice. Detective, you should have walked away." Ellie's pulse spiked. "Who is this?" The line went silent for a moment. Then, chillingly, "Check your car." The call ended. They rushed to the parking garage. Ellie's unmarked sedan sat alone in the corner. Something glinted beneath it. "Bomb squad." Marcus yelled. Within minutes, the unit arrived, confirming a small explosive device wired to the ignition. Whoever had planted it knew Ellie's routine. She clenched her fists. This wasn't just intimidation, it was war. The next morning, Ellie and Marcus prepared to move Clara to a safe house under witness protection. As they walked her to the armored SUV, reporters swarmed, shouting questions. Flashbulbs popped like fireworks. One reporter shouted, "Clara, is it true your father tried to have you killed?" Clara froze. Her jaw clenched, her voice sharp as she answered, "Yes, my father is a criminal, and I have proof." The crowd erupted. Ellie shoved her into the vehicle, heart sinking. Clara's statement would ignite a firestorm, but it also painted a massive target on her back. The safe house was a modest two-story home in Queens, guarded by plainclothes officers. Ellie stayed close, unable to shake the feeling that danger was already circling. That night, Clara sat by the window, staring at the streetlights. "You don't understand," she whispered. "The Rossi family won't stop. My father won't stop. If you think the police can protect me, you're wrong." Ellie sat beside her. Clara, you're safe here. We'll build a case strong enough to take him down. Clara shook her head. You don't know him like I do. Richard Dane doesn't lose. He owns people, politicians, judges, cops. If you go after him, he'll burn everything down to protect himself. Ellie studied her face. Clara wasn't exaggerating. The fear in her eyes was real. Then we'll burn brighter, Ellie said quietly, because men like him only win if good people stay silent. For the first time, Clara allowed herself a faint smile, but safety was an illusion. At 3 a.m., Ellie woke to the faintest sound, a crunch of gravel outside. She reached for her gun, creeping to the window. A black SUV idled at the curb. Figures slipped out, moving with military precision, weapons in hand. Ambush, Ellie hissed, rushing to Clara's room. She shook her awake. Clara, we have to move, now. Marcus was already in the hallway, shotgun raised. They found us. The first shot shattered the front window. Officers returned fire. The safe house erupted into chaos. Ellie pulled Clara through the back, sprinting into the night as bullets tore through the walls. Marcus covered them, barking into his radio for reinforcements. But as Ellie shoved Clara into the getaway car, headlights blinded them. Another SUV screeched into the alley, blocking their escape. The driver stepped out, Richard Dane himself. His expensive suit was immaculate, his expression cold, almost bored. He looked at his daughter like she was a stranger. Clara, he said, his voice dripping with disdain, you've embarrassed me for the last time. Ellie raised her gun. It's over, Dane. We have everything we need to bury you. Richard smirked. You think the law matters to men like me. I own the law, and now, he gestured, and armed men poured from the SUV. I'll clean up my mess. Clara clung to Ellie, whispering through trembling lips, I told you, he won't stop. He'll kill us both. Ellie's finger tightened on the trigger. The night was about to explode. The night air was thick with gunpowder and smoke as Richard Dane's men surrounded the safe house alley. Their rifles glinted under the headlights of black SUV. Ellie Carter stood her ground, her gun steady, Clara Dane trembling at her side. Richard adjusted his cufflinks, as calm as if he were about to walk into a board meeting instead of ordering an execution. You don't understand, detective, Richard said coolly. This city needs men like me. I build, I create, and sometimes inconvenient pieces must be removed. He glanced at Clara with disdain. Even if they share my blood. Clara's voice cracked, raw with betrayal. You're a monster. Richard smiled faintly. No, darling, I'm a survivor. Ellie's jaw clenched. You won't survive this. Before Richard could respond, Marcus burst out from the shadows, shotgun booming. One of Dane's men dropped instantly. Move, Ellie, he shouted. Chaos erupted. Gunfire tore through the alley. Ellie dragged Clara behind the SUV as Marcus laid down cover fire. Bullets pinged off steel and shattered glass. Richard's men pushed forward with military precision, but Ellie and Marcus fought like cornered wolves. Ellie dropped too with precise shots, adrenaline flooding her veins. Clara crouched low, clutching the flash drive like it was the only thing tethering her to life. Richard, protected by bodyguards, retreated toward his vehicle. His mask of calm cracked for the first time, rage flashing across his face. Kill them, he roared, but sirens wailed in the distance, dozens of them. Red and blue lights flooded the street. NYPD, SWAT, and unmarked federal vehicles screeched into position. Richard froze. The cavalry had arrived. Commanders barked orders. Officers poured out, rifles raised. Dane's men hesitated, caught between loyalty and survival. Ellie stepped into the open, gun leveled at Richard. It's over. Drop your weapon. For a moment, Richard seemed to consider surrender. Then his expression hardened. He grabbed a pistol from his bodyguard and aimed directly at Clara. Then she dies first, he snarled. Time slowed. Ellie's heart pounded. She had one shot, one chance to end this. She squeezed the trigger. The bullet struck Richard square in the chest. His pistol fell from his hand as he staggered backward. Shock etched across his face. He collapsed against the SUV, gasping, blood blooming across his immaculate suit. The Titan of New York fell to the ground, powerless at last. The firefight dissolved as SWAT swarmed the alley, disarming the remaining men. Marcus lowered his shotgun, chest heaving. Ellie rushed to Clara, who was sobbing uncontrollably, staring at her father's lifeless body. He would have killed me, Clara whispered. Ellie pulled her close. And he won't hurt you ever again. Hours later, the precinct was electric. News outlets blared the story. Real estate mogul Richard Dane killed in shootout with police. Heiress survives murder plot. Exposes father's criminal empire. The flash drive Clara carried became the nail in the coffin. The FBI seized Dane Global servers, arresting executives and Rossi family associates in sweeping raids. Years of corruption unraveled overnight. Ellie sat at her desk, exhaustion heavy in her bones. Marcus dropped a coffee in front of her. Hell of a night. She smirked faintly. You think. He leaned back. You realize you just put half the Rossi family behind bars. Not bad for a Tuesday. Ellie's smile faded. Not all of them. Vincent Caro's still out there, and he won't forgive this. Marcus nodded grimly. One battle at a time. Later, Ellie found Clara sitting alone in the witness room. She looked smaller now, wrapped in a borrowed NYPD jacket, staring at her hands. You did it, Ellie said softly. You stopped him. Clara shook her head. No, you did. I just survived. Ellie sat beside her. Surviving takes strength. What you did. Standing up to him, exposing the truth. That's braver than anything I've done. Clara's eyes brimmed with tears. What happens to me now? You'll testify. You'll help bury what's left of his empire. And then, you'll start over, free. For the first time, Clara let out a small, broken laugh. Free. I don't even know what that means. You'll learn, Ellie said gently. 3 weeks later, the city moved on as it always did. The headlines faded, new scandals replaced old ones, and the skyline still glittered like nothing had changed. But Ellie knew better. She stood on the Brooklyn Bridge at dawn, watching the sun rise over the East River. The Rossi family was wounded but not destroyed. Vincent Caro had vanished, a snake retreating into the shadows. There would be more battles ahead. Still, for the first time in a long time, Ellie felt hope. Clara was alive. Richard Dane's empire was crumbling, and justice, imperfect, fragile, but real, had been served. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. You did good, Carter. Drinks tonight. Ellie smiled faintly, tucking the phone away. The city wasn't safe, it never would be, but as long as she drew breath, she'd keep fighting the shadows that haunted it, and somewhere out there, Vincent Caro was waiting. Ellie tightened her coat against the morning chill, eyes fixed on the horizon. The war wasn't over, but the vanishing hour had passed. Thanks for watching.